This is John McCain in 1954, and here he is in 1973 at 37 years old after enduring 5.5 years of relentless torture at Hoa Lo Prison, infamously known as the Hanoi Hilton. On October 26, 1967, during his 23rd bombing mission over North Vietnam, McCain's A-4E Skyhawk was shot down over Hanoi. He ejected, suffering severe injuries, and plunged into Truc Bac Lake. Dragged ashore by locals, he was brutally beaten and bayoneted before being taken to the infamous Hoa Lo Prison. Hoa Lo Prison, originally built by French colonists to detain political prisoners, later became infamous during the Vietnam War as the Hanoi Hilton, where American POWs faced brutal conditions: solitary confinement, starvation, relentless physical and psychological torture, and forced propaganda efforts to find their captivity. Many were short-shackled to beds, left helpless as insects and rats crawled over them. Despite his severe injuries, McCain's captors refused to treat him. Instead, they subjected him to brutal beatings and relentless interrogations. It was only when the North Vietnamese learned that his father was an admiral that they finally provided him with medical care. McCain spent 6 weeks in the hospital, receiving only minimal care. He had lost 50 pounds, was confined to a chest cast, and his hair had turned white. Transferred to a camp on the outskirts of Hanoi, he was placed in a cell in December 1967 with 2 fellow American prisoners, both of whom doubted he would survive the week. By March 1968, he was thrown into solitary confinement, where he endured 2 grueling years in isolation. When the North Vietnamese learned that McCain's father had become commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam in mid-1968, they saw an opportunity. Offering him an early release, they aimed to use it as a propaganda tool, both to present themselves as merciful and to create divisions among American POWs by showing that high-ranking prisoners could receive special treatment. But McCain refused. He would not accept freedom unless every man captured before him was also released. His decision was rooted in the military code of conduct, which strictly forbade prisoners from accepting favors from the enemy and required officers to be freed only in the order they were taken. Starting in August 1968, McCain endured relentless torture. Bound and beaten every 2 hours, he battled heat exhaustion and dysentery as his body deteriorated. The relentless abuse pushed him to the brink of suicide, but guards intervened before he could act. Eventually, broken by the torment, he gave a forced anti-US propaganda confession. Reflecting later, he acknowledged the brutal truth learned by all POWs. Every man has a breaking point, and he had reached his. Like nearly all American prisoners, he was tortured into submission, yet his defiance never fully waned. Regretting his decision, he refused to sign further statements, and he endured 2 to 3 beatings each week for this. McCain spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam before being released on March 14, 1973. The injuries he sustained during captivity left him unable to raise his arms above his head. John McCain's experience as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam left him with physical and emotional scars that would shape his future. McCain's story of endurance and sacrifice would go on to define his legacy.